Those of you who have heard Mrs. Chandy's reading out of part 1 of her memoirs, which was published in My Story, brought out in 2006, will be eager to hear part 2. Part 1 was taken on 28th January 2012, and it's been more than 6 months for the second part to appear. So, without any further ado, here's Mrs. Chandy taking off from where she left off.
Within 2 years of marriage, my eldest daughter, Mary, was born. As an infant, when she was taken out in her pram in the railway colony, people used to refer to her as Chandy Baby. That turned into Chand Bibi. She was a thin, red-faced baby with long limbs, which she kept crossed all the time. This posture, along with diarrhea, which plagued her from birth, made the servants comment she had Pakshibatha, a disease mentioned in folklore. Young and inexperienced as I was, I believed them and was in tears. But it was a case of the ugly duckling turning into a beautiful swan. She grew up to be a tall, slender, lovely girl, a runner-up in the college beauty competition. More than that, she was absolutely brilliant in studies. She inherited my husband's mathematical brain. She stood first in every class and every college examination, winning the Madras University Centenary Prize for the first rank in the MSc Physics examination. At this time, she was married by arrangement to Alex Kurian, son of Mr. KayCee's, retired director of the government press Punjab, and grandson of Right Reverend C.K. Jacob, the first Indian bishop of the CSI in Kerala. At the time, Alex, or Zinu as he is affectionately called, had already been living in Toronto, Canada for 5 years. That is how it came about that Chand Bibi did her PhD in atomic physics in York University, Toronto, in a matter of 3 years. She teaches mathematics at Loreto College, Toronto. Zinu is the manager of Goldwell Realty, a real estate firm. They have 2 sons. The elder, Sanjay, is a web development manager at Warner Brothers, Toronto. A humorous boy, he told us that in the final interview before his selection in Warner Brothers, he was told, "With your looks, you should be in the movies and not work for the movies." As for the younger son, Suhail, he is a successful computer engineer, a tall, silent young man bearing a strong resemblance to his father. Manu was born fair and chubby, 1.5 years after Chandy. By nature, he was mild and totally dominated by the ebullient Chandy. He was also clever and joined the Madras Medical College, but he did not like medicine and tried his hand at advertising and other jobs. Finally, Sushil, Amini's son, took him under his wing in Colt, a computer firm he had started. He got married to Julie, daughter of the late A.J. Joseph, Kunnamkulam. Nearly 3 years after his marriage, he fell ill and died of a heart attack, as he had been a very heavy smoker. He had no children, and his tragic death at a young age marked the lowest point in our family life. Fortunately, Julie is fine and staying with her family in Kochi. Before our youngest daughter Elsie was born, I had a life-changing experience. I was around 30 when I came in contact with an Irish missionary, Mrs. Elsie Kimber. She was the wife of the superintendent of our children's Sunday school. It was a time when I felt a great spiritual need in my life, although I had everything in life to make me happy. She talked to me about committing my life to Jesus Christ. I had not been a religious person. We used to go to church very rarely. But now, by an act of faith, I accepted Jesus as my Savior and the Lord of my life. I started studying the Bible in earnest. I began to keep company with friends who had the same conviction. We began a group which met for prayer every week, desiring to live a life committed to Christ. At home, I started family prayers. We became regular worshippers in church. My values and ambitions underwent a change. It was no longer I, but Christ. Johnny was happy with these developments, although she did not participate in many of my religious activities. I was later to face difficult problems in life, the worst being the death of my son. But for my faith in Jesus, I would not have survived. The promise of Jesus that he who believeth in me shall never die saved me from despair. Thus it happened that when our third daughter was born, we named her Elsie after Elsie Kimber. She was a sweet-tempered, self-sufficient child, totally given to playing with her dolls and our passion. She grew up almost without giving me any trouble. After her matriculation, when she asked us what subject she should choose in college, none of us had an answer. But fortunately, she herself chose her future. That was to do a 5-year commercial art course in Sophia College, Bombay. An expensive course, but Chandy helped with the finances. Elsie has come a long way from that initial entry into the world of art and advertising. She founded and maintained the award-winning ad agency Ambience for 20 years before selling it to a multinational called Ambience Publicis. She is a member of the worldwide creative board for the Publicis network. She is an icon in the advertising world and represents India as a jury member in the most prestigious international award shows. All I can say about her meteoric rise is that it is the Lord's doing. She married Jose Nanji, a Parsi whom she met during intercollegiate competitions in music in Bombay. He was studying law at the time. He is a gifted musician and guitarist and a successful businessman. They have 2 children. Johan, who is 18 years old now and is on the threshold of entering an art school for car designing in Pasadena, California. Arya, a pretty little maid, is studying in her 10th standard and she excels in singing and playing the guitar. Our life rolled on and coasted along the headquarters of many regional railways. Guntakal in Andhra Pradesh, Hubli in Karnataka, Delhi, Guwahati in Assam. Life in Guwahati on the banks of the Brahmaputra was the happiest period of our railway life. The strange charm of the hills, the people, the equable climate, the journey on the tiny hill train from Siliguri to Darjeeling was an otherworld experience. The first-class carriage with glass windows showcasing the Himalayan ranges, the snow-clad Mount Kanchenjunga rising like a white pyramid in the far distance, and the tiny railway stations, picture-perfect cottages flanked by flowering plants. Distant rumbling of aggression from China became a reality with the fall of Bogdila to the Chinese in October 1962. The families of the railway men were evacuated the very next day. It was going to be another 2 months before we could join Johnny. His health was badly affected by long hours of work and indifferent food. He suffered a very serious heart attack. On recovery, he was posted to Madras. Since then, we have lived a settled life in Chennai. I had worked part-time as a teacher off and on, but in 1969, I received an offer to work as principal of the Cultural Academy in Santhol, a home science institute run by Catholic nuns. I remained in this post for 30 years, during which period I introduced many job-oriented courses. Teaching was not just a profession for me, but a vocation. That I was called to work as a teacher and administrator in my early 40s was God's special provision for me. I had been a public speaker in college, and this job offered me opportunities for speaking in public from different platforms, schools, colleges, and public forums. I have also had the privilege of being invited to speak from the pulpits of my church, the Kirk, and other churches. I work as the editor of our church magazine, the Kirkspire, and write occasionally for papers. I also handle the hospital visiting ministry of our church. After my retirement, I taught for 11 years as a part-time teacher in Stella Maris College, Chennai. My pastime is watching tennis on TV, especially the Grand Slams. I had played tennis of sorts in my college days, and my interest in it was revived when Thomas started playing competitive tennis in school. He has outgrown it to go on to music, leaving me alone to watch Pete Sampras bidding farewell, Agassi in tears after his last match, Roger Federer winning the Wimbledon, and Nadal rolling in ecstasy in the red dust of the clay courts of Paris. In 1981, Johnny passed away, leaving us bereft. However, his insouciant gay spirit, his generosity and colorful personality will continue to enrich the family. The children admire him greatly for the courage and nonchalance with which he faced life. They tell me that my greatest contribution to them has been my insistence on their economic independence. When my siblings and friends were busy finding good matches for their marriageable daughters, I used to tell my daughters that marriage was only a part of life. But for the first, they should always study hard and use all their talents to find fulfilling jobs, and then they would win the respect of their husbands and in-laws to be. Jesus told the story of a merchant searching for goodly pearls, who, having found one pearl of great price, sold all his other pearls to buy it. All my life earlier on had been a quest for the pearls of money, possessions, and fame. Then I found Jesus. Life is full of happy and sad circumstances, but faith in Jesus can sustain us in this life and take us to glory when we pass on. I hope all my dear ones will find this to be true.
Thank you, Mrs. Chandy, for giving the viewer a glimpse into the very interesting and unusual life you have had and continue to have. Your reading is a legacy to the world, and KayCee's ViewSpot is honored to have been the medium through which your story has been told.
Thank you.